Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and the society in general. I am Father George Ehusani, and I have with me in the studio once again Bishop Mathew Hassan Kukah, Catholic Bishop of Sokoto, discussing the challenge of being a Christian in northern Nigeria today, with all the problems we are facing from bandits and kidnappers, and particularly Boko Haram and ISWAP. Now, Bishop, you're welcome once again.
Thank you very much, Josh. Thank you.
The last time we were discussing the antecedents of the things happening in the north today, the unfortunate incident of the death of the killing of your seminarian, young Michael Nandi, and what happened before independence and how the British did not help matters by a situation which planted in the very structure of northern Nigeria from the beginning is inequality between those who are Muslims and those who are Christians. And it is not just Christians who migrated from other parts of the country to that place, but those who are indigenous. That indeed there are indigenous northern Nigerians who are, Hausa speaking, who are Fulfulde speaking, who are Christians. I mean, we often speak as if every Hausa and every Fulani is a Muslim, but that there are indigenous people, and they hardly can get into a commissioner of anything. They can hardly get into power. When you're thinking of appointing a minister from a northern state, you hardly get any of those people appointed. Now, this is the problem. If we are going to have a country where people are not resentful, where people are not bitter, where people are happy with the system, with the structure, with the government, with governance, then we have to address all these injustices. We need some kind of, how do I put it? Some kind of, is it encouragement or nudging of Christians across the board to use the law? I mean, the Christian in Adamawa State, the Christian in Borno State, the Christian in Katsina State, they have all the rights of anybody in Katsina State. Absolutely. According to our laws.
Absolutely.
So, if they are not getting it, what processes should we begin? I mean, that homily of yours that I referred to in the first segment, it's a wonderful, almost like wonderful starting point. But what are the other steps we can take towards educating people that human rights are things you have to keep fighting for? Your fundamental rights in the constitution under the constitution of a country are things you have to continue to struggle for. What kind of steps can we take to educate the generality of the people?
One of the early amendments of the American Constitution was the whole question of citizenship and then the right to vote and so on. And that presupposes a certain level of understanding. And if you read Martin Luther King, you listen to Obama, you listen to Jesse Jackson, the whole question about participation in politics was not necessarily about elections. People focus on making sure that you have a voter's card and you are asked to exercise that right. Now, there has been a failure of tactics and strategies. For me, I'm lucky. I'm perhaps, two of my governors, because Sokoto Diocese is Katsina, Kebbi, Zamfara, and Sokoto. And I'm lucky to have two former speakers as two of my governors. The governor of Katsina was former speaker, Governor Tambuwal, former speaker. It has predisposed, giving them a certain kind of very liberal understanding of a lot of the issues. The governor of Kebbi, I'm very lucky. There are people I talk to, and they're quite open. There are many problems that confront the North today that many of the young generation of governors they don't know anything about. In the sense that they were not there. And this is where constructive engagement now comes in. Only 2 weeks ago, I was very struck, less than 2 weeks ago, when I saw a news trailer, I think it was NTA or so, saying that the governor of Katsina, Alhaji Bello Masari, had said that he was going, according to the news trailer, that they were now contemplating the introduction of the teaching of Christian religious knowledge in Katsina State. I was struck by that. I picked up my phone and called him and I said, look, I want to cross-check, is this really the case? And he said, yes. We're trying to take inventory of the schools that have substantial Christian presence so we can begin to teach Christian religions. This is a spectacular breakthrough because it is something that hasn't happened as policy in northern Nigeria. And so I'm saying that therefore there are certain measures that have been taken. So really part of our challenge is to decide frontally to start this conversation, because as I said, all this while I guess many of us as Christians continue to lament. I don't like the word minorities, because I hear about Christian minorities and so on. But the reality of the situation, I say to people, look, by the grace of God, and I'm not being arrogant, I've got some really good education. So it's not here that I will come and see myself as somehow I'm inferior to anybody. No. And it's not such clear cut as Christians and Muslims. This is really not the reality of our life in Nigeria, because as you saw with the case of Alhaji Abubakar, the old man in Plateau State, who was able to hide Christians in his mosque. You can replicate those stories all over the place. Yeah. The North is full of some really, really wonderful human beings. What is toxic in northern Nigeria is how the political elite have continued to manipulate religion by creating this illusion. Because don't forget, I feel when I look back now at the people that failed to vote, that voted for Buhari in 1999, 2003, 2007, 2011, and their frustration, and suddenly 2015, and then so where they are now. I don't think that anybody in his wildest of imagination would have imagined that with the Buhari presidency we'll be where we are today. It was a bit unfortunate to hear the president himself say that 90% of those who have been killed are Muslims, because we should not be talking in those terms. Nigerians
even one Nigerian dying.
Even one Nigerian is one too many. But even more importantly, I don't come to Sokoto, Katsina, or any of our cities and find a place where there is water, only that it is only being taken by Muslims, or that there are roads, only that only Muslims are on the roads, or that there is electricity shining in the houses of Muslims and we who are Christians. It's that we have been held hostage.
All of us.
All of us. And once we continue to remain on this path of we are Christians and they are Muslims, you create the illusion that somehow the Muslims are a privileged group of people who are just sitting there conspiring against the rest of us. The story is much more nuanced than that. It is that, as the Emir of Kano said, only last week,
yes.
How do you explain the fact that you are contributing to 87% of the poverty? How do you explain that? It's not as if somebody came and imposed some kind of a system on you. So,
and sorry to interrupt there. Talking about the statement of the Emir of Kano at that birthday celebration of El Rufai, where he said that no leader really in northern Nigeria should really be happy. Well, because looking at the poverty level, looking at the number of out-of-school children in northern Nigeria, looking at the level of destitution, looking at all this, how can you call yourself a leader in northern Nigeria and be really happy?
Well, this is the situation. For example, and I made the point, in the last appointment of ministers, there are 15 ministers from the Northwest. And out of those ministers, only 2 of them are Christians. There are certain government policies that by themselves deepen the animosity between Christians and Muslims. And when government creates the impression that it is here to defend a religion or a region, you create the problems, because at the end of the day, people don't see the result. So really, a fundamental thing that has been missing in northern Nigeria and right across this country has been the lack of infrastructure. Because when people go back and sound rather nostalgic about those good old days, the good old days were the days that the trains were running. And they brought people from Calabar, from Akwa Ibom, from Calabar, wherever. Because if you notice what has happened to us now in Nigeria, I believe, and I'm not exaggerating, maybe 90% of the citizens of Sokoto State, Kebbi, Katsina, Akwa Ibom, everywhere have never traveled out of their state. Because those of us who were at the airport yesterday are those who will be at the airports today, will be the same people who will be at the airport tomorrow. So the lack of infrastructure has further created so much tension and anxiety among Nigerians. Everybody is angry about lack of light. Everybody, so you are fighting over either because of electricity,
or water,
or you cannot find water, or the road, and so on and so forth. So occasionally we try to cover all these things up by presenting the issue as if it is between Christians and Muslims. So the issue therefore is that and this is where I commend the government, and I hope that they can fast track the whole question of the struggle to create more railway lines. Because for me, once the trains begin to run from Karanamoda to to Calabar and here and there, then citizens can make some really rational choices about choosing where they want to stay. Right now, we are literally hostages in our environment. I'm now in Sokoto, and if I die, I'll be buried in Sokoto. I come from Kaduna State, but Kaduna is Sokoto that is home to me. I think that there are people who are living in Lagos and different parts of Nigeria who have chosen to make places their home. I think that at the level of even indigenous and settlers, it is really about poverty and wealth. Because if you are an Ibira man and you have 50 million naira in your pocket, and you go to Kano, you go to Sokoto, you go to Akwa Ibom,
you're a big man there.
They will drive poor man and give you land to build whatever house you want to build. So this whole debate about indigenous and settlers is again hungry people struggling, trying to get into the same.
Because of no opportunities.
Because of lack of opportunities, and because people don't know what is happening elsewhere. Because if we had the railways, people will move in different directions. There will be less tension. There will be less crisis. If you go to settled democracies, whether it's in the United States or Europe, nobody will tell you that. People may tell you, I was born in Arkansas, I'm now settled in Boston. Nobody is worried about.
Talking about the lack of infrastructure, the poverty, and so on and so forth. Now let's go back to the issue of northern Nigeria. Before Boko Haram started 11 years ago, it is reckoned by a number of Nigerians that Maiduguri housed some of the richest Nigerians. Maiduguri housed some of the richest Nigerians. They had some mansions that were talk of the town all over West Africa, all over Africa. And yet, look at the landscape around, completely denuded, destitute, and so on. And that is replicated in many parts of northern Nigeria. Whereas if you go to eastern Nigeria, you have a situation where one person is a big man and he is sponsoring 5 of his nephews and nieces, and 3 or 4 of his wife's nephews and nieces, and so they keep helping one another. And there are so many community projects in eastern Nigeria that those community projects, in the absence of government, they make up for a lot of these things. But there is near absence of those kind of human beings and those kind of structures and institutions in the north. So you have multi-millionaires and every other person is destitute. So you have almajiris all over the place, and that has given birth to what the situation we have today. Uneducated young people who now follow any kind of ideological fanatics and are preaching all kinds of hate messages. What can we do about this? Because what the scenario I painted about Maiduguri could have been replicated in many parts of northern Nigeria. No,
you are talking here at the level of whether the sociology or the politics of it will call elite behavior. That is, and everywhere you turn, how an elite conducts itself is a measure of how a society grows or how a society develops. The concept of, noblesse oblige, what is the obligation that the rich have towards the poor? Now, and the northern culture in its most convoluted form, not in its Islam, because most of what happens in northern Nigeria, whether it's polygamy or whatever, is Fulani and Hausa culture, not Islam. So people who think that the religion, for example, I read an interview with one of the retired justices of the Supreme Court, I forget his name now, but he's now living in Argungu 2 weeks ago, in which he said that his father was educated, and that the Malam who was teaching them the Quran one day just came with about 10 calabashes, and told them, "Oh yeah, go begging." And he stood his ground. He said, "What are we begging for? I'm not hungry. My father is okay." He said, "No, it's a religious obligation." He reports the man to his father. It is his father who said, this is not. But you have an entire culture that has been spawned around the notion, which is the beggar in Hausa land tells you, Allah ebaka kabani, that is, may God give you so that you will give me. That means that
I remain
where I am, because so that is the way God, that's the way God has designed it. Now, when you put that kind of person in the same room with an Igbo man who says, you are not, God didn't put you here to do for me, I can do it for myself. Then you have a conflict.
No be you they feed me.
No be you they feed me. Now, so when you now look at the way Igbo society has developed and other places outside northern Nigeria, you will notice that what the North has done, and it has done it very, very, very well and cleverly too, is that the elites, instead of taking responsibility for development, simply transport federal and state institutions into their communities and allow those institutions to be responsible for the development of the communities.
And actually ruin those institutions.
Well, so, I mean, these are some of the issues, but to again, that the northern society that thrives on rancadede and subservience and an acceptance of the will of God, these are the kind of social contradictions that Marx tried to deal with.
Well, you're dealing with feudalism. I mean, primitive feudalism.
Well, and don't forget, the truth of the matter is that, frankly, Nigeria is far from being a democracy. We're largely in a semi-feudal system, because I don't know where you see in a democracy traditional institutions or traditional rulers playing the kind of role that they play in Nigeria, where politicians are struggling almost on a daily basis to find which one they will compromise and so on and so forth. The nobility of the institution is such that it's now being challenged by people being literally compelled to be partisan because you've got to make a choice. But the reality of the situation is that the antecedents of democracy collapse, when it comes to Nigeria. And I think, again, is like what you have in northern Nigeria. The average northerner will tell you, my religion is my politics. And because of that kind of culture, when people do not interrogate authority, because in northern Nigeria, if you live in a culture of rankedede, then it means you cannot ask questions, even when the big man makes a mistake. Matters are not helped by our democracy could have been a little bit more robust, but tragically, the political elite have simply, taken over the apparatus of power. Almost every state assembly now is in the hands of the governor, and all that every governor does is just make sure that they get their monthly crumbs.
Yeah,
because that is where you would have been able to have some bit of robust conversation based on what my people want and what my people like.
That kind of sustaining of a feudalist system, it's not likely to last for long.
Well, this is what, the violence in Nigeria can be traced to these realities. Because when you hear Nigerian politicians said, we cannot develop in an environment of violence
crisis
or instability.
But you
and I said,
it.
you are the ones creating the instability and the crisis. People are just struggling to survive. So it is again the fact that you must also understand, when you go to the Yorubas, for example, where people are pretty well educated, I give you a very flippant example. If you burn a mosque in Yoruba land, they probably will take you to court. But if you steal a vote, they probably might kill you. If you steal a vote in northern Nigeria, I say, Haka Allah, so maybe that is the way God wanted it. But if you burn a mosque, they probably will kill you. So it's a question of a threshold of values and of course it's only education that you can use to negotiate the choices that you make in society. And there is a direct correlation between the high prevalence of illiteracy in northern Nigeria and the tensions and the violence.
Of course.
And that's why the area has become so combustible, because today's Almajiri grows up and probably ends bandit, up his tomorrow's banditry is just one choice, but he could also end up from being today's Almajiri at the age of 30 or 40. He could get into a state house of assembly, could become a senator, could become a member of the house, could become a politician. Now, unless you dilute your excesses by interactions with other people, you will get the kind of consequences that we face, which is that a lot of these people, because of what they were taught about other people, they've not been able to have an opportunity, which, of course, let's say institutions like federal universities, institutions like federal colleges, and so on and so forth, they provided people that opportunity. But if you look right across the country,
we have destroyed all those institutions.
Yeah, because many of these institutions have become glorified fiefdoms. I mean, you can, and I've said it in several university lectures that I've given across the country, to say, look, I mean, it is totally unacceptable that you say, for example, Usman Danfodio University, Bayero University, Kano, that even though these universities don't have the resources, or University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and so on, that you build a university in Nsukka and you name it after Nnamdi Azikiwe. You build a university in Sokoto and you name it after Danfodio. You build a university in Kano and you name it after Ado Bayero. You build a university in Ife and you name it after Obafemi Awolowo. What are you saying? You are just saying to the Yoruba, this is your own federal character we brought to you. Or you are saying to the people in Sokoto or Kano
this
or Calabar or wherever.
The
result is that you cannot hope to be a vice chancellor no matter what credentials you have. So a lot of these universities have now become ethnic enclaves where both religion and ethnicity are being used as measures for determining who is going to be vice chancellor, who is going
to be promoted, and who is not going to be promoted.
All of that has filtered down the system. And this is why you find that our institutions that should have been institutions of mediation are not different from the Nigerian state itself, because the pettiness, the ethnicity, the squabbles, the perceptions of injustice, the religious discrimination, all of them are prevalent in these institutions. So by and large, and this is where the tragedy falls in terms of what the elites have been able to do in terms of negative contribution to where we are, is that a country that allows itself not to have a clear process of reward, that is that, okay, I've got a first class, I know where I'm going to.
Yes.
All right. I sit for an examination to get to a university. I know where I'm going to. I've not done very well in my examinations. I know the consequences. I chose an easy course. I know the consequences. But when you have a situation where people don't know what the outcomes are, you see all these children, they come to me. I'm sure they come to you. The military is recruiting. Police are recruiting, SSS is recruiting, everything is by hearsay. And every day young people come to me, they say, Bishop, they are recruiting under the table in the central bank. They are recruiting under the table in FIRS. They are recruiting under the table. And you do your best to say, well, but they say they are going to advertise. They say, Bishop, they are not, the advertisement, the jobs have already been given out before they are advertised.
And it turns out to be true.
And it turns out to be true. So I say to our people, you are raising a generation of Nigerians whose loyalty will never be to Nigeria. Because if I'm the one who helped you to enter the security, any of these security agencies, your loyalty will not be to the federal government of Nigeria, it will be to me.
Yeah.
If it is their traditional ruler, or if it is this is there are no perfect societies anywhere. The most important thing is people need a certain level of goalpost that they know, if I do this, this is what the outcome is going to be.
Before we end this segment of the program, I need to ask this question, because I have been speaking in recent times. Some went on social media about the revenge of the poor, about the coming anarchy. Is it that our leaders at the federal level, at the state level, is it that leaders let's say we're talking of northern Nigeria now, they cannot see the coming anarchy? Is it that they cannot see that this convoluted arrangement cannot take us far, and that this thing is going to crash in the next 5-10 years?
George, I have said this severally. I have no wish to insult anybody. This is the only country from day one till today that you've never had a single president who can tell you that he sat down, he studied, he developed a template to what he's going to do if he became president of Nigeria. You go from Buhari, go back all the way down to Tafawa Balewa, you will find that everybody came in by accident. By 2011, Buhari said, I know they do again. I don't want to be president of Nigeria. I'm out of politics. These people who went and insisted that he should come back. Is it Obasanjo? Obasanjo was in prison. It is people who said, come and be president. Yaradua said he was going to teach chemistry in AB. So this state of unpreparedness suggests very clearly that leadership by accident will produce accidents. And we shouldn't deceive ourselves. We were celebrating because Yaradua was the first president of Nigeria to have a university degree. I have friends in other parts of the world. I have a young man who is a friend of mine in America. He's given himself about 20-something or 30 years to be president of America. He has an idea about what he wants to do and how he's going to get there, unless something happens to him. He may not. But it is that we have a country where the elite are so shrouded by the circumstances of their coming to power that what really passes for elections, everybody knows. from president, governor, everybody knows that most of what we call elections today are really not elections. And there's nobody who will tell you that to be president of Nigeria, after you spend all these billions, and then you tell me you've not lost your moral authority to be able to do the kind of, because like they said, you know, you don't go to a party organized by cannibals and you say you won't eat human flesh. So when you say you don't have money and you collect money from other people, you've only, you know, like they say, you steal from a thief, you've taken a loan. These are some of the things, because our leaders lack the independence. They lack, because it's not about, that's why you can almost say that they are you know what are the things in the Bible about, they say what they said about Jesus. He spoke with authority.
Not like our
And
scribes.
if your work does not match your talk, then you lack authority.
On this note, we'll be bringing this program to an end. I would only say to Nigerians and to those who are viewing our program to say, look, they say if you do not change your course, you will end up where you are headed. Where we are headed is not where we desire to be. And what Bishop is saying is that the responsibility to change direction is on all of us. All Nigerians, we have the responsibility to change direction. We want a peaceful society. It will not come in a platter of gold. We must work for it. We want a just society. We must work for it. We must test the law, test the limits of the law, of our constitution, with judicial activism. On this note, we bring this to an end, and I hope someday we'll have Bishop Kukah again for us to have this lively discussion advocating for a better society, a more just and peaceful society. I've been speaking with Bishop Mathew Hassan Kukah, Catholic Bishop of Sokoto. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Father George. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.